Hey everyone, I'm Scott Branley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear how direction given in a patriarchal blessing, an inkling to pay it forward, and a lost job is all working together to help Hondurans attain more joy and success in their lives. Welcome to Latter day Lights. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on another episode. We've got a really inspiring story that we're excited to share with you today. We're actually going to be hearing from Alicia's friend, Emily Hemmert, today. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Now, listeners, this is the second episode that we're recording where I sound like a dying frog. So I apologize for my voice, but I am super excited to sit back and just kind of listen to Emily's story. You guys, it's truly an incredible one. It really, really is. And I have all the confidence in the world that Emily will be able to talk for the whole show. She'll just carry the whole thing and it'll be wonderful. It'll be great. And Scott, he can just comment here or there, and you guys don't have to listen to my froggy voice very much. So,
Oh, you don't sound that bad.
okay.
Well, feel free to cut me off if I get a little long-winded.
Okay. Well, so Emily, here's a fun fact. Did you know that you are our first official guest to reach out to us to actually share your story on Latter Day Lights?
Yeah, I heard that's cool.
It's really cool. It's funny. John actually, he's so funny. My husband got up and he bore his testimony, and then he like gave a shout out to our podcast at the end of his testimony. He's like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah?
and by the way, I was just like, John. Yeah, I was a little embarrassed of that. I was like, oh no. But next thing I know, Emily texts me and she's like, I have a story to share. And I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe it was totally inspired. So I'm very, very happy that you reached out. I think it's going to be a fun one.
Well, thanks for being willing to share my story.
Well, thank you for being willing to share your story.
So Emily is not only a go-getter when it comes to being our first guest to offer to share her story, but she is quite the go-getter in other areas too. Emily, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
I grew up on a ranch in Central Nevada, and after graduating high school, I went to NAU in Flagstaff, Arizona. I have a degree in environmental science. Um, I really enjoy photography. I've run 7 half marathons, have yet to run a full marathon
Wow.
because that's crazy. And
Uh-huh.
shout out to all the people who can do that. So I have 3 kids that I'm home with, and my husband Anthony and I have been married for about 10 years. 10 years in September.
Wow. So that's cool. I actually have ran one full marathon, and that was my bucket list accomplishment that I'm never going to do it again.
Kudos to you.
Well, I run marathons all the time on Netflix, so I'm just saying.
Ah.
It's hard, okay? It's hard work sitting and watching.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
Well, Emily, why don't you jump into your story and share that with us today?
Okay, so like I said, I grew up in Central Nevada, and I didn't grow up a member of the church, but my parents were separated, and so with my mom, we went to kind of a smorgasbord of churches, and but I had friends in high school who were members of the church. I actually had 2 of the 7 kids in my graduating class were Mormon. So, you heard that right. That's
All
7
right.
kids.
Seven.
7
Okay,
kids.
yeah.
And so I had them as an example to me, and I would go to church activities and stuff with them. So when I went to college, I kind of had friends who invited me to do things at the church. And so I was kind of what you call a cake batter Mormon. Have you guys heard of that? Just add
No.
water.
No.
That's funny.
So
Okay.
Cute.
so I joined the church as a sophomore in college, and I was really enamored with the sister missionaries. It just looks like so much fun, and I really thought that I wanted to serve a mission. Um, but um, well, and my patriarchal blessing also specifically says I should serve a mission too, so I had that. But I was a little bit nervous about leaving my dad for such a long time because he was having some health issues, and but I, had a really strong confirmation that I should go. So for us older folks, you might remember that um, missionaries at that time, this was about 10 years ago, were not allowed to contact their family um, other than email, other than on Mother's Day and Christmas, which is an
Right.
issue because my dad didn't know how to use a computer. And so that was hard. Knowing that I was, not going to have communication for him during that time. So, um, but my vision of kind of what it was like to be a missionary was very different than what actually happened when I got to the field. So I was called to serve in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. And I kind of started out confident that I was going to be able to learn the language, but it actually ended up being a lot more challenging than I expected. And it was honestly frustrating because um, just not being able to go and teach the lessons right away and not have a way to understand people or communicate with people. I mean, it was cool to be able to rely on the gift of tongues to be able to speak and also to understand. But in terms of communicating with my companions, that was incredibly frustrating. Um, I had one of my companions one day was like, I can't understand you. You can't understand me. I'm not going to talk to you.
Oh no.
And so
Wow.
that
Jeez.
was really isolating because if you think about being a missionary and you're with this person, 24/7 and they're not talking to you, and then when you go out into the street and you don't know how to talk to anyone, so that was a really lonely time, and I felt really frustrated of like, why am I here? Why is this so hard? Really wondering like what the purpose of it all was in being there, especially not being able to speak Spanish well.
So, wow, Emily, did you ever end up getting a hang of it on your mission? Did you become really fluent in Spanish, or was it just kind of something that you struggled with the whole time?
Yeah, so by about 6 months, I was able to communicate basic doctrinal principles, um, which I think is common for missionaries, right? They come home and we can talk about Joseph Smith all day long, but like, don't ask us to talk about don't ask us to talk about things outside of gospel principles or church talks kind of thing. So
Yeah, I went to South Africa on my mission and I spoke English and that was lonely and everyone I served with spoke English, so I can imagine how hard that would be to be in a foreign country and struggling with the language and then, struggling with your companion who doesn't want to talk to you like that. I'm sure that was really hard. So where did that go? Like did you get through it? Did you push
yeah, we
through and
survived. We pushed
okay.
through, and I was actually able to have a really amazing companion who was super patient and just we worked through our language barriers, and she was really patient, and we've stayed in touch, and so that's kind of, we'll be going into that more, but so I made it through the mission and I came home. My husband and we knew each other before. So I came home from the mission. We got married and we had our son Emerson in 2014. Um, but when he was 2, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And that kind of rocked our world because it was out of the blue, and I don't think you can ever prepare for your kid having cancer. So during that time, we were introduced to the Tyler Robinson Foundation, and they were um, life saving, basically, for us in terms of helping us get through that time. So we knew at that time that we wanted to eventually start a nonprofit to be able to pay it forward and to help others like we had been helped. Um, and we didn't know exactly when or how what we would do, but we knew that at some point it would be revealed to us what it was that we were supposed to do. So we just kind of waited for some direction, um, and now we know. So
So now, how long did you guys go through treatment with Emerson, and how is he today?
yeah. Okay. So he had 3.5 years of treatment because of his leukemia being he was at really high risk based on like genetic factors and how he responded to the initial chemotherapy. So um, yeah, 3.5 years of chemo, and he's doing great now. So he's happy and healthy, and we still have some relapse scares every once in a while, but so far so good. So
So what was like I've never heard of the Tyler Robinson Foundation. What is it and why did it help you? Like
yeah, that's a good question. So the Tyler Robinson Foundation was started by the band Imagine Dragons. They had a fan, Tyler Robinson, who um, had kind of reached out to them, was going to their shows, and they had kind of developed a friendship with him. And so when he passed away, they decided to create a foundation in his honor, and they help pediatric cancer families with offsets some of their costs to be able to afford the medical care for their children. Um, so a percentage of the band's ticket sales go to the foundation, and they give grants for families battling cancer. So
Wow, that's so cool. I have to say, I I thankfully have never been in your position where I had to help my child get through chemo or anything like that. But as someone who's went through it myself and who now, is going through it, watching my mom go through it, it's taxing. So my during my 7 years when I was on chemo and stuff like that, I actually got a lot of help from the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society as well as the Cancer Foundation, and it's I don't know how I could have done it. So it's amazing. Like I love that there's nonprofits out there that are able to help people out because it's not just about the finances. It's a whole world of what ifs and now I have to remember this and what's going to happen again. And with you, I'm sure, especially in your situation where this was your first child, you probably had, all of these fears of like having more children, right? And what if that happens to them and, what if this comes back?
yeah, so I was actually pregnant with our daughter
Oh.
when he was diagnosed. So,
wow.
Oh, so
I
you
mean,
were
I think
oh,
it kind of worked out because I don't know if we would have gotten pregnant during going through all of that, but
wow.
yeah, it was a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Dang.
That's oh, that just makes it so much harder, Pregnancy is over emotional anyway, but you're a beast. I love you.
Yeah.
Well, continue on with your story. So you guys were thinking about starting a foundation when everything was done and over with. Obviously, you guys didn't want to do anything at the time. So where are we at? Where did this inspiration come from?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I had kind of one mission companion that that I got along with and that we stayed in touch, and we had been kind of trying to find ways to help them because in Honduras the majority of people live in poverty, and
Mhm.
they were just kind of struggling, but we were kind of struggling with finding ways the best way to help them, right? um,
Hmm.
and so my friend Nellie, she kind of approached me and she said, that she had taken her daughter to the clinic for a fever and that they told her that her daughter was malnourished. And she kind of confided in me, the level of struggle that they were having. which I don't think until she confided in me that we kind of understood the gravity of the situation, right? So we really knew that we needed to do something, that we were in a position to help, but we didn't really know how. Um, Her husband at the time was the branch president, and they had been praying that he could get a job. He needed just some stable income, and he was feeling really burnout on his calling, and he was wanting to be released, and he was thinking of going and asking to be released. And at that same time, they called him to be the district president. And so she was kind of funny because she said, we learned to be really specific in our prayers because we've been praying for a job. And she's like, but we didn't say we needed a paying job because, as everyone
Oh.
knows, being a district president, it's a lot of work and it's a huge time commitment, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like a
Mhm.
full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he became the district president, and he had applied for a job with the church, and he had made the decision that if he didn't get the job with the church, that he was going. This was in December, by the way. He made the decision he was going to come to the U.S. illegally to be able to send money back and support his family. And um, we really didn't feel like that was the best choice given just the circumstance of logistically trying to get to the US and kind of what that looks like, and also just their family being
Right.
broken up, and also just that he was in a position, in a leadership position, and they needed him there.
Yeah.
The A lot of the members have left to come to the US, and so we were left kind of wondering what can we do to help this family. And I think, I'm not really sure, but I think my husband had the idea, but neither of us are taking credit. But basically, we feel like God gave us this idea that for him to become the administrator of a nonprofit in Honduras. And
Wow.
so we kind of pitched this idea to him, and he was really excited, and everything just kind of fell in place for it, because this just happened in December, and January, February, March, and we're rolling, and miracles are happening. So it's been pretty cool to see how it's all kind of fallen into place.
Awesome. So what is the nonprofit? What is he doing?
Yeah, so our nonprofit is called the Markovia Project, and it's named for the area where they live, which is in Markovia, Honduras. And his job is to oversee everything down there. So he oversees, um, we get donations for uniforms and school supplies for kids because in Honduras, if you don't have a uniform, you can't go to school. And so in these really poor areas, a lot of kids don't go to school just because they don't have a uniform. Something really simple. And so we collect the
Wow.
donations, money donations, we send it down, and he goes and buys the kids their uniforms and their school supplies and all of that. And then we also provide microloans, which are basically small business loans for people who want to start or grow a small business. And so he finds the candidates, and he oversees that he mentors them in giving them business advice and helping them have a successful business. So he basically, I call him like a superhero. He's amazing, and he's kind of does it all. So
That's awesome. Now, Emily, you mentioned, starting and growing a small business. That sounds very, very reminiscent of something that the church has set up through the self-reliance programs. How does that work with your foundation?
yeah, so my husband and I were actually called to facilitate the class for starting and growing a small business, and we had finished that in December at the time that we were starting this project. And I think, a lot of our inspiration came from that class, and understanding that these people um, don't have access to loans, don't have the means to have capital, and that with their desire to have a business, that they really will be successful. And so um, we also now, as part of a requirement for those who are receiving loans is that they actually take that class. So my mission companion is teaching that, and I think it's a great class. I think um, it helped us, it's helped, I think it helps people all over the world. So I would recommend it for anyone, or any of the self-reliance classes for anyone who hasn't taken them.
That's really cool. So have you actually started this? Like, have you been helping people already,
Yeah,
or is
so
this
we
coming up?
yeah, so my husband and I committed to paying Armando's salary for a year and funding a single business loan for a loan each month for this year. That was kind of our initial commitment. It's what we felt like we could start out with. And so we have funded 7 loans ranging from um, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but selling used clothes, having a store in their home, having a small restaurant outside of their home. So these are all relatively small loans, and but for these people it's really life changing. And as far as the school uniforms go, we've been able to help 11 kids,
Wow.
which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but I kind of want to explain who some of these 11 kids are and why for them it's a really big deal. um, One of the girls, she's 8 years old. She's never been to school before. She can't read and write. She lives with her mom, who's a single mom, which shout out to single moms because I was raised by a single mom. Um, and so we found out about her, and within like hours of finding out about her, we had the money, we sent it down there, they got her enrolled, they bought the school supplies, and she was like enrolled in attending school within a week. And the teachers committed to teaching her how to read and write. And so for her, it really is a huge difference, right? Like it may seem like, oh, that's one person, but for someone who's never been able to go to school, it's a really big deal. um, and then we've also helped, there's a little boy who um, one day had gone out with his brother because they had not had food that day, and they went to a mango tree and were trying to knock mangoes down with a stick, and their sticks hit the electrical wiring, and they were both electrocuted, and both of them lost their arms. One of them, the older brother, completely lost like the use of his other hand as well.
Oh
But
my
this boy was
gosh.
not attending school, and we were able to get him in school, and also able to, by doing so, give him the feeling that even though he has a disability, that his life matters, or that it doesn't mean that his life is over. Because a lot of the jobs there are physical jobs. And so I think there's this sense of, if you're disabled, you're kind of like, your life has no value because you can't do anything, right? But what we hope is by giving him the opportunity to go to school, that he'll be able to find employment, as an adult, doing something that doesn't require to have both arms. So we're really happy about the 11 kids that we've been able to help, and we hope to help. We have the goal of helping 32 kids when they start school next year. So
So tell me, like, I own a business, and this is right down my alley. I love hearing stuff like this, but um, tell me like the cost, like how much, like if you're willing to share, like I'm just interested, like how much does it cost to pay his salary? How much does it cost to get uniforms for these kids? What amount of money are we talking? How much is one of these loans, right? Like what are we talking?
as far as the loans go, we kind of had this idea to cap them at $500. And so, for example, we gave a welder $400, and he was able to go buy steel, welding rods, paint different things, and with that money he's done really great. um, but we ran into an issue with capping the loan at that amount, because um, that works for growing a business, because you already have like a skill set. For example, with the welder, he already had a skill set. He needed more tools or better tools. But where someone might be totally starting from scratch, right? There's a lot more capital needed. And so our biggest loan that we funded so far is $1,300, and it was for someone to open a store in their home. But the biggest cost was like $1,000 freezer that they can sell. What's actually pretty cool about this is that where they live, they service 80 houses, and because people there, they don't have cars, they don't go to the supermarket, and they buy their groceries daily. So it's like, I'm gonna have rice and beans tonight for dinner. I'm gonna go and buy my rice and beans and cook those for the day, right? And so he's actually doing a really big service for that entire area by having his store. But what he can do by having a freezer is he can have um, milk, cheese, chickens, a lot more that they didn't have access to before. And so we felt kind of good about that, knowing that we were giving him the tools to be really successful in his business. Yeah, so as far as numbers, that's kind of where we're at with that.
That's amazing.
Okay, and what about the uniforms? How does that
Okay, yeah,
work for the
sorry.
school?
So, depending on the depending on the kids, the um primary kids need less and the older kids need more, obviously, just because um they just have different expenses basically. But the average uniform cost is uniforms. So when I say uniforms, it's uniforms, um and all their school supplies is about $150 a kid.
Well, so a kid can go to school for 150 bucks,
For
Wow.
$150, a kid
essentially.
can go to school for a year, yeah.
That's
And you can
awesome.
see why, if you're
Wow.
making $300 a month and you have multiple kids, it's really
Yeah.
it's unrealistic to be able to afford to send them all to school. And often they prioritize sending the boys over the girls. And so
Mm-hmm.
something that we also want to make sure is that every household is sending not only the boys to school but also sending the girls to school. So
Wow. That's so cool, Emily. I can't even tell you like how inspiring this is to me. I've never really traveled too much outside of the US, and I've always heard of these conditions, but just listening to the few examples that you've shared today, um one, it makes me feel super blessed to have had all of the opportunities that I've had living here, but it also makes me feel like there was this phrase once, excuse me, that someone had said that if you have the ability to do something, then you have the responsibility to do it. And for me, just
I like
hearing these
that. I
stories,
might
it
steal
it
that.
really, you can. I stole it, so it's okay. Yeah, I think it really inspired me just to think, oh my gosh, like how much money do I frivolously spend on things that I don't really need, right? When I could totally be donating to a cause like your own, and there's so many great causes out there, right? Like there's so many people who could use help inside the United States, outside of the United States, people of all different ages and races and genders. And I love that you have taken this kind of hard experience with being called on a mission and feeling like you just weren't adequate enough, and spending those months where you were lonely and everything like that. I love that you didn't let your mission end at that 2-year mark, that you've carried it on, and that you've like kept it in your heart, and that you now are able to continue to serve those people that maybe you haven't met in person, but you've been around their culture. And I think it's amazing. And so that's all I can say. Oh
Well, now
gosh,
I use my Spanish every day now, communicating with them, and they've even
that's
said that
awesome.
in the last 4 months, they're like, you know, that my Spanish has improved a lot. So
That's awesome.
I can now talk about things other than Joseph Smith. So I feel pretty good about
Well,
that. Banking terms.
that whole thing about whom the Lord calls, he qualifies. I totally believe in that. I totally believe in that. And he'll qualify us in his time, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be on our timetable for us to be able to receive those blessings and the increased skill and knowledge and talents that we need in order to further the kingdom. So golly. I just I'm super excited about this. And I I did donate a little bit earlier. I think it was shoes maybe that you guys were trying to get funds for. I know I donated a little bit earlier, but I personally would love to be more involved in your project after hearing some more of these details. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I do too.
Oh, awesome. So how we plan to go move forward with the uniforms is providing opportunities for people to sponsor a child. And what that would look like is that you pay um, you pay for their uniform and their school supplies, but also for two gifts for the year, one at their birthday and one at Christmas. And
Oh,
so and then you kind of have the opportunity to correspond with them. You're welcome to send me cards that I can translate or send to them, and
wow.
then they'll send cards that I can translate and send back and exchange videos. And so I've done a little bit of that with people who have sponsored some of these kids so far, and it's been fun to see the kids, writing these letters of gratitude. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we want to set it up, um, giving people opportunities to just take on one child and feel like they have a connection to that kid. So.
That's awesome. I think like my kids would love to have that experience too, right? Where they can meet somebody from from another country and know that they're helping to help, make that child's life better. So,
Okay, so you can follow us on social media at the Markovia Project on Instagram. And we also have a website, which is the markoviaproject.org. And so on our
Now,
website, there will be where you can choose kids to sponsor and also loans to um, if you wanted to fund a project.
that's awesome. That's so cool, Emily. So let me just ask you, to kind of wrap all of this up, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us? Anything that kind of stood out to you in this whole process and things that just really helped you in your testimony?
So today I actually had a cool experience. So I don't know if Alicia's mentioned, I guess she did mention today that her mom's going through breast cancer, but um, my mom is a breast cancer survivor as well as two of my sisters and my son. So I guess not breast cancer, but um, so having gone through that, and I'm assigned to minister to Alicia's mom. And so I've been trying to think, really what would help her right now as she's going through chemo. And she had mentioned on Sunday that she's at a point with her chemo where it's just like hard to want to keep going, right? And I remember that with my mom, she had got to a really dark place where one day she was just like, this sucks. I'm, like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think she was going to take her life, but she just had this feeling of like, I'm done with this. Like, this is not not good. And so I had the thought to bring her flowers, knowing that that would be something that she could look at that would maybe cheer her up. Um, and so today I'd gone to the grocery store, bought all my groceries, went to leave, and realized that I hadn't bought the flowers like I had planned. And I was feeling kind of frustrated with myself of like, how did I forget the flowers? So went over to the flower section, picked out some flowers, decided to get a vase, and the floral attendant decided she needed to help me. And so what would have been like a 5-minute thing ended up being this like 20-minute ordeal. And she just was really taking her time. And I was feeling a little flustered of like, I don't have time for you to do all of this.
That is like a true Elko thing, right? Like an Elko, everybody just
But
kind
it's
of
true,
we just mosey. Like everyone just like meanders and moseys and we
right?
just talk
No sense
forever
of
and
urgency.
no, like nobody has anything else to do except for whatever they want. Hmm.
So I got to the checkout and this girl in front of me, she had like a newborn infant, and like a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And she goes to pay and she's like, I don't have my purse with me. I gotta go out to the car. And I'm like, I got you. And so I like, they have those like tap things now. Those are like the best invention. So I'm like, I got you. And I'm like
Hmm.
tapping the thing. Partly because I needed to get out of there, but also partly because I was like, that's a nice thing to do for this young mom with her 3 kids at the grocery store because it was snowing outside. I'm like, you really don't want to have
Mhm.
to like schlep them all out there and get your wallet. So, anyway, I guess circling back, my thought was that I had today is don't let kindness stop with you. And um, there's always opportunities to pay it forward, right? But so many of us have been on the receiving end of so many good things, and we need to not not let it stop with us, right? We need to give and find opportunities to serve and to help others because like you mentioned, I mean, we're incredibly blessed here, and sometimes I don't even think we recognize it and recognize that there's opportunities. And something that I know is that for us, um, something that might seem like a small donation is actually, a really big donation for someone in Honduras. And so when we can just give a little bit, it's really giving a lot to help these people. So
That's amazing. You know what I love about your story is you're just a regular person, right? Like, and you just had this idea, hey, like we need to do something to help other people. Let's start an organization and let's do microloans to people in Honduras. Like, let's help our friend and give him a job, and let's help these. You know what? Let's help these girls and kids get into school so they can get an education. Like all these little things, but what's amazing is I'm sure you from the stories you've told us is they just once you've got that ball rolling, miracles start to come out, right? And it gains momentum. And something that started with this desire and you didn't know how it was necessarily gonna pan out. Now it's gonna keep growing and gain momentum, and it's gonna help so many people's lives. And I'm just wow. Thank you for sharing it with us and inspiring me and Alicia. I definitely want to get involved. I will pledge personally to get uniforms for 2 of your kids,
awesome. Well, thank you
and
so much.
Aw.
I'm
That's great.
sure. Yeah. So I'm sure other people will too. Like once they hear your story, you're gonna get more and more help, and I think you're gonna be surprised
Oh yeah.
just how much
Well,
people are
thank
willing
you.
to give and support your cause. So,
Yeah, well,
You're
thank
so
you for giving
welcome.
us the
any last
opportunity to come on
thoughts?
here. Um, I guess I just had a few thoughts that I know. Sorry, we're long-winded as
You're
Elko
good.
people know.
No, it's okay.
We ain't got nowhere to go.
So, um, a few last thoughts that I had is just specifically kind of what you were talking about, like that I'm just one person, right? And I just read this book. It's called Radiant Mormonism, and it's written by a guy who has been part of 40 different nonprofits all over the world, and a lot of it's micro lending and stuff like that. And his work has led to fundraising $1 billion. And he's done, they've
Wow.
given millions of loans and stuff. And so sometimes I think we fall into this trap of thinking, I'm just one person. I can't do these great things, right? And I think it's good to step back and say, you are one person and you can do amazing things, right? And so even if it's not starting an organization, it's donating to an organization or finding ways to serve others. And then my last thought is just that I think in our culture, we can have a little bit of compassion fatigue where we feel like I pay my tithing, I go to church a lot, and I do all of these things, right? And so, like, I'm going to wash my hands of everything out of sight, out of mind kind of attitude, right?
Mhm.
And so, I just kind of want to challenge you to think outside of that and find ways to serve even a little bit more. I know everyone already serves a lot, right? But find opportunities to continue to give even though we're already giving, which is hard, right? When you think about, and I was just talking to my mom and she was like, you guys already give 10%. You can't ask people for more than 10%. But I think just there's opportunities to do more. And one of the things I really like about kind of how our approach is that we're not just looking to give people money, because that doesn't help them. We're looking to give them the opportunity that they need to be successful, right? And so I think there's a difference in, like they say, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. And that's really what we want to
Right.
try to
Yeah.
do, because there are organizations that are, can do more damage than good, I guess, right? And so what we really want to try to do is make sure that we're being helpful and doing it in a way that's blessing people and allowing them to become self-reliant and kind of follow the principles and of the gospel. So
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's exactly what the church, especially in the last decade or so, has really heavily been trying to push, is that self-reliance, right? Like, the more capable we are of taking care of ourselves and our families, the more capable we are of helping others too. And when you're in that position of being self-reliant, um, in any way, whether it's emotionally or spiritually or physically, financially, whatever, you don't have to waste so much time stressing out over figuring out how you're going to make things work. Then all of a sudden you have room to be the blessing for others, right? So I love that you guys are doing this. I love that you guys are you're not only doing the small business loans for adults, but that you're also helping the children who, at this point, they obviously shouldn't be totally self-reliant because they're children, but you're helping them to be able to get an education so that they can learn and grow, and so that they can eventually become self-reliant adults, right? So Emily, thank you so much for coming on here. Um I know it was a little nerve-wracking perhaps, but I just really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. I appreciate your friendship, um and you being so open with everyone, and being willing to share your experience, and the things that have inspired you to grow in your life. And I love you, and I love your family, and I love what you're doing with this. So thank you so much for joining us.
thank you for giving me the opportunity to get on and share a little bit about what we're doing and have a platform to kind of spread this message. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. I've never met you before, but I love you too. And I love what you're doing. What an amazing story. Oh, it's so inspiring. I've personally been to third world countries, and I've seen the need there. And when I've like you were talking about, when I've given more, even though I give already, when I've given more, I found that it comes back to me tenfold. And I it's just this magic. I don't know what it is, but when you stretch yourself and you give more than you think you can, somehow you have even more to give. So thank you so much for being willing to take that risk and put yourself out there and help other people. I think you're going to have a lot of success, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Thank
So,
you.
to our listeners, if you want to be a part of this amazing project, go to the markoviaproject.org, right?
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And, see how you can help out and get to know Emily and her family. And also, if you have a story that you'd like to share that you can feel can inspire other people, go to latterdaylights.com and let us know, like Emily did. We would never have known her amazing story if she wouldn't have reached out. So, and you can do that too.
Yes, please do. And listen, guys, if you don't mind, be sure to drop a comment on our Facebook page, letting us know how much you love the show, and what might have inspired you, what your own takeaways were, and especially if a story like Emily's can help you to grow your testimony, and to make it a little more sure in its foundation in the gospel. We would love, love, love to hear that. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your responses to these episodes. Um, Also, it would be very helpful if you guys wanted to go ahead and like and share our page, like and share these stories, especially Emily's. Please, please, please help us to share her story, and to share the markoviaproject.org, or to share the wherever their platforms are at. Make sure that you share their pages and information as well. With that, if you guys have a story to share, remember, head on over to latterdaylights.com or find us on Facebook. And I think that's it. Scott, you good?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Take care, guys, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.